Welcome to the Millfield Way podcast. I'm Dr. Scott Draw, Director of Sport at Millfield. Before I came to Millfield, I spent some time really trying to understand the history and values about the school. It's a really young independent private school formed by Jack Boss-Mayer, and the principles by which he founded this school really connect with the modern day principles around development. The Millfield Way is about how we develop young people. We want to become the world's leading development arena for young people, and we do that in many ways. We do that through the classroom, we do that through co-curricular activities, music, drama, art, and we also do that through sport. When you ask people about Millfield, they always reference sport and what it's renowned for. And it certainly has amazing outdoor facilities that can inspire and get people engaged into sport. It also has a reputation for supporting, developing high ability individuals who go on to achieve amazing things in sport, whether that's Olympic, Paralympic or professional domains. It also produces many amazing coaches and administrators and people that continue to go on to work in sport. And sport is now much bigger than just being a participant. It's a tremendous field, it's a tremendous industry of which there are many opportunities for young people. Sport is, as a participant, provides multiple ways of developing people. We always think about the physical and mental benefits of being involved in sport, but there are many other things that it provides just because of the nature of it as an activity. When you look back at sport, for all those who participate, train and compete, it's one of those environments of which you lose more than you win, you make more errors than you succeed, but because it's such a rapid learning environment, you get the ability to try again, you get to try those things with your peer groups, you get to develop those skills that will prepare you for life. And often we don't talk about or recognise what those characteristics are, and all of that is what forms and shapes the Millfield Way and how we go about developing brilliant people for their lives above and beyond Millfield School. So what's the future of sport at Millfield? It's interesting because in my background, where I spent a lot of time in a very developing high-performance system, it's particularly with Team GB from the Olympics from early 2000s, to then some time in professional rugby with England Rugby, and then in professional cycling with Team Sky. The impact that those changes outside of education are now beginning to have on people's expectations around what sport should look like in education. And in some ways, we need to find better ways to align to those changes. If you are a high ability individual that shows some natural talent in your sport, you have to now align and participate in the national governing body pathways to help achieve your dream. So education, we need to make sure we provide those opportunities for our individuals to participate in sport in school and benefit from all the value that has with your peer group, but also to connect to the world outside of school, to stay connected to the club and National Performance Development Centre that has now emerged in many sports. So that's one of the things that we all look to change in some ways, so we're much more relevant and ensure we generally provide a bigger overview of what happens all year and make sure we get that balance right between what goes on in school, what goes on in sport outside of school, and also during the term times. So that's a really important move. So we're looking at something called the Millfield Sport and Education Schools, which is a much more flexible academic and sporting model that could allow you, for example, to consider taking your A-levels over 3 years to create space in your calendar so you can absolutely give your best to your sport, but also achieve the best you can academically. So that's one of the biggest changes that we'll look to emerge and look to implement over the next few years to find better ways to support those individuals who genuinely want to achieve the best they can. And for us to do that, we need to be a lot more flexible. We're also looking at ways that we can modernise what we do in sport. As in every school and every part of society, we do have individuals here that don't enjoy the sporting opportunities on offer. And it's our responsibility to find those things, to help them find their passion. That was one of the original principles by which the school was founded. And there are now many more modern activities, many other different sports and activities we can provide that give people the opportunity and the choice to try those over periods of time. You know, we're looking at reintroducing gymnastics, but looking at the modern formats of that through parkour. We're looking at introducing other team sports that may inspire and engage the individuals that are here. So we will look to modernise our sport programme, provide many more opportunities to engage, and just help to find individuals find the thing that really matters to them, that helps them create friendships, that helps them create teams and really find a really good balance around the experience that happens at Millfield. We're also going to be spending a lot more time just looking at how we genuinely operate, really improve our induction and understanding process, a lot more engagement with parents, and also to recognise that we can't do sport without all the teachers that come here. Many come to Millfield because they love the balance of being able to teach and coach in the classroom, and also to teach and coach on the sports field, and also to teach and coach in the boarding environment. That true holistic engagement that we provide is one of the real unique selling points, and one of the things that's absolutely stand out at Millfield. And so we'll look to do a lot more and lead that through the sport department, so people really understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and can play a lot more active role in how we bring sport and other activities to life at Millfield School. And one of the other big things that we're looking to do is really improve our outreach and our connection with other local schools, local national governing bodies, but really to bring others in that can help enrich the academic experience through sport. And with all that in mind, what I'd like you to do is have a listen back to our Value of Sport and Education series with former Fiji Sevens coach Ben Ryan, Director of Millfield Tennis Kate Warren-Holland, Millfield's Head of Business Catherine Glover, and Millfield Head Boy Oscar Zaki, which explores the ways in which sport can enrich the lives of pupils at Millfield, inside and outside the classroom, by learning from a multitude of domains and multitude of different industries of how people consider development, and how we can learn from that to ensure we bring to life the Millfield way in the future.
Thanks, Ben. First thing, Ben, I'll just start off with you, is you were a teacher at the start, you've been a coach. If you now look back at going back into education and your experience in England and Fiji, what are the key things, if you're going back into the classroom, that you take from those experiences for people to learn from?
I think the lessons I learned in Fiji, there was a background in the teaching for me, for sure, but it wasn't necessarily my education learning to be a teacher and then what I spent in. It was the reason that you become a teacher in the first place. And that I got reminded of that in Fiji, that ultimately it's about getting the best version of every student, every player you have, to get them bouncing into your classroom, really excited for what they're about to do, feeling like they have autonomy and they have belief and all those sort of things. And the ripple effect will be that you're going to get a high-performing student that's going to do their best. It's the same for a player. If you get a player in the right state of mind, that they're so happy to be where they are, I know that we're going to get good performances. And so, that was my biggest takeaway, because with England, so much data, so much stuff going on, so many people involved, you actually forget about the person sometimes. And actually, they're everything. That's what matters, not all the extra stuff.
Great message. And for everyone, you'll get a chance to respond. Oscar, what did you take away from what you just heard from Ben?
I thought it was really inspiring for me. I took a lot away from your metaphors and how I relate with them in music, and, working with people you've never met before. You really have to create a bond, and you have to be able to make sure that you can work with them productively, and also make sure that it's not completely artificial like the England team. Otherwise you get no enjoyment, and that's something that I take in school when you're working with people, and also when I'm creating music with people. It has to be the right environment.
And for me, Ben, just from your book, the main sort of message that I kind of took from it was the connection that you were making with the players. And I think our connection as teacher, student, and that relationship that you build with that student is absolute paramount, really, to getting what you want from that particular student. And I think, echoed what you said, is no student should really turn up to a classroom and expect the next hour. It's almost like the variety is the spice of life. You don't quite know what to expect within that particular lesson, and doing things differently all the time, and sort of pushing the students outside of their comfort zone, but also the teacher outside their comfort zone to do different things and look at it in different perspectives and different ways. It just keeps things like a buzz and excitement and engagement around that learning. So yeah, I think that's my main that I've learned from that.
And Kate, for you?
I think for me, the amount of time and detail you went into with the connections with the people and the broader person in terms of family and environment, I think that's a really important area in sport in general. If you understand where they come from, their family dynamic, and all the other aspects that go into their motivation, I think you have a much better way of pulling from them their best performances in what I've seen.
And I think one thing that really stood out from what sort of Ben presented around there was the idea of fun, enjoyment, love, all those characteristics. So can you just share some experiences where you try to do that in your environment, and how you sort of what that's done in terms of the opportunity that you're in?
Yeah, I mean, sort of in our subject in business, we're quite lucky whereby we spend a lot of time out of the classroom, and I think that's really quite key. It's just them enabling them to learn in different environments. So, you know, we take them out to various different businesses. We get an awful lot of guest speakers in coming to speak with them, but we're very sort of student-led learning focused, whereby they're learning from each other, not just necessarily teacher-led. There's a lot of peer collaboration going on. And I think that the feedback within themselves is quite powerful, rather than just the feedback from sort of the coach and the teacher, which is again what echoes what Ben was saying about how he was getting a lot of performance out of the team.
And what's the most fun environment you've been in, Kate?
This one, I think. For sure, this one.
Note that.
No, it's true. I think in some of the other environments I've been in have been quite, because they've been so performance orientated and very detailed, a little bit like you're talking about with England Rugby, with the LTA. You know, going into that environment, it's very pressurized. You know, there's a lot of, you can't necessarily treat the player as they want to be treated, because there's goals and targets that have to be met. Whereas actually in this environment, it's about what the pupil wants to get out of the experience and their love for the game in the first place, because they don't have to come on the courts. So they're coming through choice. They want to learn, they love the game. That's why they play it. They don't have to. Whereas in all the other environments, I feel like they probably have to.
Yeah. And Oscar, pupils' perspective from the school, what do we need to do as a collective, coaches, teachers, to make this environment more fun?
Well, yeah. For me, I've been at the school for 12 years, so I've seen a lot of change and been part of a lot of change. And I think I was the first year of the Year 9 programme, and for me, I think that it helped create community and create a lot more enjoyment, because you got to go on adventures and you got to really explore yourself and the school and who you are. And I think literally this is my only kind of environment I've been in. Obviously, I'm externally working with people, touring with people and helping create people, creating artists and creating the music around artists. I think for me, this is a really interesting environment, because there's so much going on and it's so easy to miss something just like this or a talk that's happening tomorrow that I don't even know about yet. I think these kind of environments are so fun and so kind of underappreciated sometimes. But when you kind of take a step back and you go, wow, you know, this is really incredible.
Cool. We've got a couple of good questions coming through, so maybe Ben, one here. Somebody's asked, when you were told you're not going to get paid, what was your motives to stay?
Well, Scott was he said it twice now, how, you know, I decided to change tact and from England, but I've, you know, my run-ins with England effectively pushed me out the door, and with that came a bit of a payout. So I kind of used up our savings, and I took a risk. I think it was a good lesson. Like, we all get in life decisions that are risky, where your heart is soaring about the excitement about where this decision might take you, but your stomach's doing somersaults and you're worried about it. And it's kind of allowing your heart to sometimes win the battle. And so I knew we weren't going to get paid, but we had just kind of decided this is what we had agreed to do. So we stuck with our side of the bargain and hoped the rest of it fell into line. And kind of things can happen positively if you have a positive outcome about things. So yeah, that was where we were, really.
And another great question from a group here is, how do you find what somebody's real passion is and what drives them? So do you share experiences from your time with Fiji, and then you guys sort of chip in personally or things that you've seen in pupils?
It's the same, like we were talking about this earlier. I mentor kids in Islington on gang exits and stuff like that, and it's exactly the same as an England player or a Fiji player. You just be curious with them. Ask questions that allow them to answer, and like have lots of space in your answers, so that you actually, when you have that pause, it's a bit awkward, they then kind of come out with the good stuff. You create that environment that's relaxed enough for them to feel safe and tell you things, and then that leads you to further questioning, and so that you feel autonomous and they understand that you're there to help. You're not doing anything to catch them out. I think that's ultimately it. Be good at being good at conversation, communicate well, treat them at the same level as you, and don't start, thinking that you're any better or any worse than them, and have a consistent behaviours with them. Don't be that coach that you get a hat trick in the game, and you're high-fiving him down the corridor, and then he has a bad game, and you just you ignore him. Be consistent in your behaviours with people. Because it goes back to getting the best out of people, and by finding out more, asking questions, being curious, you're going to do that.
Yeah. And you guys, Kate?
You talked a little bit about the flat line kind of management or the system. I think that's a key thing really of getting the best out of people in the coaching team and also in the players really, in the pupils, is actually giving them the space and the time to be creative with what they're doing and be honest and open about what they want to get out of it and what they're feeling at that time. You know, they're feeling under stress with academics, they need to pull back from their sport, and being with them on that journey rather than pulling against them almost, for me, is a key area.
Cool. And you guys?
I think listening, to the student is absolutely key, and also to be willing to adapt your teaching style or coaching style based on that feedback, and not necessarily feel that you're the expert all the time and you know everything 100%, because that's never true and no one's ever perfect. And it's the same in the classroom, and I think it's important to listen to that and then adapt to the individual needs to be able to get the best out of them, because that will be different depending on which classes you've got, which age groups you get. So I think it's quite important to take stock sometimes and not just railroad what you've kind of always done and think is the best way, when actually it might not necessarily be, based on the feedback.
And Oscar, if you reflect back on how you found some of your passions here at Millfield, what have been those stimuluses for you to help find out what's really kept you going?
For me, it's just been it's the feedback from the teachers. In music, I find if I'm doing something wrong at each concert, I can go to my teacher and I can ask, how can I improve and how can I make this a lot slicker and a lot more appealing to the audience. For Young Musician of the Year, which the posters have gone, they were here this morning. I had a big feedback sheet, and I've gone and I've highlighted it, and I've worked out, for me, I don't usually do these kind of concerts. I usually play, and I've got big pop music behind me, but it was just really intimate with the piano and my solo voice. And now I know how to work with that and how to work forward, and I get the feedback. And it's the same in fencing and also in the classroom. I know my teachers give me feedback, and you can question it and they'll answer, and that's the most valuable feedback, getting it straight from them instead of just kind of a short comment.
Okay. And Ben, probably one for everybody. You spoke a lot around that informal together time that you had as a team, a lot of social construction, as we call it, in a natural connection. Oscar's already said how busy things can be naturally at an independent boarding school, particularly what happens here: sport, music, art, academics. It's sort of non-stop. So, knowing the school and knowing the education sector, what do you think we can do here to create more of that natural downtime, social construction to really help the learning environment? And same for you guys as well. It's open to everyone.
I mean, I just remember, when I went from state school, where we had a little PE room that didn't have any windows, and then I was assistant housemaster in boarding school in Oxford. But the same thing, it comes like I would find kids sit down at lunch, at break, start finding reasons to chat to them. You're doing boarding house duty, and you keep the door open and you have the kettle on. And it's literally, you can create the environment where they feel welcome, and they can sit down, and it's informal. And if you've been consistent in your behaviours, and they know that your conversations aren't always going to be about your subject, your work, and you want to physically know more about them, then they're more likely to engage and have more informal conversations with you. In Fiji it was easy; it was around the hot chocolate machine. That was their go-to. It's the national drink. And so you could sit for hours after dinner, and they'd just be, you'd be able to chat with them on that level. So it's finding also what's a good environment for them.
What are your thoughts, experience here at the school?
I think car journeys, trips are the
more
ultimate time to get to know these kids. And then we've just started recently doing actually the detailed stuff that you don't get time to do in this school, kind of meet them for breakfast, meet them for dinner, meet them for lunch. So those kind of, their downtimes, you join them in their downtimes, which creates time. So that using those opportunities, and we've talked as a department about pastoral, and there's definitely a positive in that, as well as us going into their houses and being able to interact with them in a more social environment. But yeah, trips for sure, you get a huge amount of work done in terms of relationships and getting to know them.
Cool. You guys, anything to add?
Yeah, I'd agree with Kate with that. I spent most of my time in the state sector, and so at 3:10 when that bell goes, there's a mass exodus out, and all 2,000 students are off, and so essentially your connection with those students is just in the classroom. But I think the beauty of here is, you know, you're connecting them in-house, you know, you're connecting them with doing the community work and taking them out into community, you connect them on the sports field, in music and drama and everything else. So I think there's quite a lot of, although it's really busy and it's crazy, but there's a lot of places, different places, opportunities to have that kind of downtime and that relationship and, you know, with the students, and to be able to, you know, talk to them on different levels, really.
Yeah, I'm going to find there's some great questions coming in from the audience. So there's one here that's open to all of you, and maybe start with Ben, but how can we as parents best support and encourage this creativity within children?
Great question. Look, you know, that black and white that I talked about, that needs to exist. But, you know, within that you must let people flourish, and you want to make them autonomous and empower them. So I think less is more around simple frameworks and allowing your children to do their thing, knowing that it's not always going to go right, that they're not always going to reach the goals that you aim for, but there's a longer term benefit in doing that to achieve that autonomy, and that, you know, so you can work for yourself. So, you know, certainly I think, you know, take away some of the things that maybe that you think is giving them some help, and just make them a little bit more empowered, so that they can find their own way. I mean, yeah, that's how. And then you can see that in their behaviours. So I remember with Fiji, you know, I used to see the players helping people just take their bags off the carousel at the airport. Or I remember once where 2 people had suspected heart attacks on the flight from Australia to Fiji, and that they were serving food, and our boys just got up and started saying to the stewardesses, who were getting freaked out by this, saying, "Don't worry, we'll serve the food." And they were going around asking chicken fish. And like, I didn't need to do that, but I could see at that point you'd empowered them, and they thought that's the right thing to do. And that's what happens when you create an environment that's black and white, but in that you really, really do allow them to do their thing.
Yeah. And anything to add to that, guys? Yeah.
I find there's a limitation in the sport of tennis from people's backgrounds, that it's very tough to then create opportunities for them to be creative. So the autonomy part of it's easy because they're playing on their own and they're playing in individual competitions, but being creative around practice, the moments we give them those opportunities, they find it very, very difficult now, because they're at that age where they've had so many years with everything so structured. Whereas if I take my 5-year-old daughter, it's no problem at all. She doesn't have telly or iPads and stuff, but she's creating, she's drawing, she's building, she's, you know, but I think the way that they are being brought up, these children now, is by the time they get to this age, that 14, 15, everything's so structured that it's a big job to take that away and add in the creativity. We try.
You can do it though.
Yeah, you can do it.
100% possible.
Yeah.
So next week, Oscar, you've got a presentation in front of parents. You didn't know this yet. And you're going to explain to parents from the perspective of pupils in the school how they can help them be more creative. What would you say?
I would say, for me personally, I have a really good relationship with my mum, and we talk a lot, and it helps me kind of offload and kind of reassess where my kind of focus is, and then it helps me be more creative, because that I don't have other external kind of things on my mind kind of distracting me from what I want to do. And making sure that as a student, knowing where I have my outlets and knowing where I can communicate with people, to make sure that I don't interrupt my creative flow in music and also in fencing, because you have to have a plan. I know it's in all sports and even in exams you have to have a plan, but in fencing you have milliseconds to think about your plan. So if you have something else in your mind, you've lost the fight. So it's really important to know how to offload in the right space.
So you got a good job for parents there. Good. And we're just going to open up the floor so you can share out questions. But this one's always a delicate balance, particularly in sport. So one question that comes through is, how important is winning to success? And that's open to all of you. There is a lot of debate around, as you know, around winning versus development and how you get that right. But it's a good one in this type of environment. How important is winning to developing and growing and being successful as a person?
I kind of reframe it a little bit for me, so that, you know, obviously as a professional coach, you're under massive pressure to win. And, you know, so we talked about this earlier, you know, in my first year with Fiji, we went to the bowl for the first time in their history, and it wasn't my fault particularly. Well, it kind of was. One of the players threw the ball out rather than kick it out, and I got death threats for the next week on my phone. You know, previous coaches had their houses stoned, but I guess technology's moved on a little bit. And you know, and gold medal was everything. You know, that was, you know, it was that or nothing. And and you will get sacked if you don't get your results. However, if you understand that by your behaviours and by your processes, the ripple effect will be winning, then that's, for me, is how I approach coaching professionally. You know that you don't necessarily have to say, this is my outcome, I want to win a world title. If your processes are right, you trust your plan, and you're doing all those other things that I talked about, then the ripple will be that you win games and you win tournaments.
You sound like Sir Dave Brailsford. That's all right, that's good. Anything to add to that?
I think for me personally, having competed and also in fencing and in academic competitions and also for music, I find if I come off the stage, come off out of the exam hall absolutely beaming and so happy with my performance and how I've done, I think that's the most valuable thing, because then I go, okay, I obviously did some things wrong, I didn't win, or these are the outcomes, but I feel really happy and it's empowered me to work harder and motivate myself to move forward. But I remember you mentioned with the England team, when they won, you weren't happy. And I think finding that balance so you are motivated but also really happy with your performances is really important.
Cool. So I've got one question for you, and then we'll give people that last few minutes and it's from Kieran. It says, how does he win at Roslyn Park?
Yeah, there's one tournament. I've won quite a few tournaments in my time, but I never won Roslyn Park.
He's the wrong person to ask.
It was tricky. Yeah, so I had 5 attempts and 4 semi-finals, I think. I get your processes right. You know, getting to the start line happy, and you feel like you've got them aligned, and then everything else, your plan is right and your prep's right. Then you let them do their thing and hope that they'll all come together. But like we just talked about, if your processes are right, you don't need to talk about winning Roslyn Park. You just need to stay in the present and concentrate on exactly what you're doing without thinking too far ahead. I didn't win Roslyn Park for a couple of times because I was trying to be too clever and planning ahead for who we might be playing in the final rather than living in the present. So that's my only advice.
Good message. So listen, last couple of minutes, I know some of you may not have your smart devices with you because that's what we're like, but anyone want to stand up and ask a question on panel? Or yes, give us your name and your question.
Mainly for Ben. Ben, bearing in mind you achieved what you wanted to do and you couldn't get any higher, is there any, you might just be able to say no, but is there anything you would have done differently?
No, I mean, there's definitely loads of mistakes I made in my first few months, little ones and big ones, and you learn from them. I mean, I think we all know that some of your most valuable lessons are stuff that you do badly wrong, and hopefully they don't sack you and you can learn from them and get better at them. No, I don't think I would have changed anything at all, the good and the bad. Yeah, because they're all valuable lessons.
Good answer. Yep. Yeah.
Ben, I was interested to read in your book that you were a talented 400-metre hurdler. I think you went to the English schools. A negative sort of coaching experience put you off the sport, which was probably rugby's game. How far do you think you could have gone if you'd had a sort of positive?
Well, my mum thought I could have really gone very far, but. It did. That negative story with the coach at Thames Valley Harriers put me off because I was I think 2 or 3 ranked in UK age group when I went to Loughborough, and then at Loughborough I was ranked 12 at the university, and rugby was a lot more fun with a lot of more mates, and that negative experience. I think hopefully I would have made international athletics, but you do things that go back. You do stuff that you enjoy, and I enjoyed playing with my mates, and I didn't enjoy the pressure that I used to put on myself as an individual athlete. Didn't help, my dad went to 2 Olympics as well, so I thought, do another sport.
And anyone else? Okay, there's 100 more on here. Oh yeah, go for it. Last but not least.
How do you allow yourself, how do you find the time to spend, a lot of these kids, they want 5, 10, 15 minutes of your time to give them feedback one way or another. How do you find time? You've got lots of players there. Yeah. Classes, you've got lots of. How do you find the time? Quite important, I would imagine.
Yeah. So I mean, without wanting to speak out of, but one of the previous England 15s coaches used to do regular feedback, sit down in his diary. He spent hours and hours and very long early mornings, late nights doing stuff, and he used to do it regularly. And the feedback when he left was, this coach doesn't know us. And he thought he did because he was doing feedback, but it was formal, it was across the table, and it wasn't about the stuff they really wanted to know and get to know each other. And I do lots and lots of informal, consistent feedback. Just because you're sitting at a desk doesn't mean that that's the only type of feedback you can do. Catching people in between training sessions, little positive affirmations. That was great. You did that really well. Lead on to something else. Can you lead this in this lesson? Do you mind sitting down next to me at breakfast? How about grabbing a cup of tea? To build that feedback that's consistent. Because in sport and in teaching, I mean, sport's terrible at. We always have the same reviews at the same time. And sometimes it's a hot review just after a major championships, and sometimes it might be 6 months after. And you know, just because you say you do your reviews 4 times a year means nothing to me. It might be a 30-second conversation around the coffee machine that he'll get more feedback, and I'll get more feedback. So I think that's how I do it all the time.
Actually, it's a really good point around feedback. The use of feedback and how you articulate that has been a big theme for the sort of school, particularly this term. So what's the best feedback you've received for the panel, just to finish off?
I think recently, because of the work we've done, there's been a few times where we've gone through a process of the players giving us the feedback on sessions. We've done recently an informal questionnaire, kind of, what can we improve, what can we get back, and actually there's a few things that came out of that were incredibly important, and common threads that we weren't aware of, and it has changed our behaviours.
Similar, actually. We've just conducted in our department, we've just done a whole student voice really for the AS and the A-level students, for all of them, and it's really interesting. We've got 50 members of the department sort of collating sort of those results and finding the common themes and the common trends, and actually talking about as a department, okay, well, how can we change this, what can we tweak, and again, it's that listening really, and being willing to adapt and challenge yourself maybe to do different things. Yeah.
And Oscar, for you?
It's the same, just from my music point of view, it's just the constant feedback on how I can improve with a song that I've just done, because George Ezra's most recent song, I think there was 10 different versions over 12 months before he released it, and so I'm in the same process but in a very small amount of time because I need to get it released. So showing it to loads of different people, WhatsApping it to people and asking for their really brutal feedback, even though it might hurt me, I really like that bit, it's really important, so I know that it'll fit with the playlist I want to get it on.
And it's yeah, go for it.
I was just saying, I'm doing pro UK sport around feedback, and 2 key things about you want your feedback as fast as possible, and certainly faster than the opposition in sporting terms. But that also means having courageous conversations quickly with people. So never let anything dwell. If there's any conversation you have to have with a player, a teacher, a pupil, just don't leave it hanging. Approach it straight away and be proactive in that, and that's the same for up managing anyone. If you don't wait for them to feedback on how good your teaching is or how good you are as a pupil. If you feel that up managing is a 2-way process, and you should be able to be proactive and manage that relationship just as much as your boss is managing you. So that, if you have in your mind feedback needs to be as fast as possible, then those decisions can be made a lot easier.
And that's a great way to finish. So Ben could have probably spoken for an hour, and we could have continued these conversations, I'm sure, for a long time. But if you'd like to put your hands together to thank the panel and for Ben for this evening.